So right now the problem, the Bhutanese ki mainstream media ki role, it has become like we are here to authenticate what is what in social media ki fake accounts ki chuminale inna mena authenticate benizum be ane be asipal.
And therefore, if they are able to remain apolitical, since by design they are more permanent, they can ensure that irrespective of political leadership, national interest is always protected.
His Majesty the Fourth King that why civil servants need to be apolitical is to support government, make it functional, and also ensure that civil servant provides a continuum of services during election cycles, so that there's a confidence from our people. There's a free and fair election being conducted.
So there's always a fine balance between being neutral and non-political, between a civil service that's politically sensitive and responsive.
And similarly, I think you have political parties who are not necessarily elected in parliament, but they're there nonetheless representing viewpoints of certain segments of society.
Today we're going to have a very apolitical conversation on the topic being apolitical. The idea of the conversation is that we understand this very important aspect of democracy, important value of democracy, being apolitical. And we'll start with Tashi Teuma. So I'd like to ask Tashi Teuma to share a media perspective of reporting on Bhutanese democracy.
Kusuzongpula everyone, good morning. I will basically talk on how this requirement for our public servants, especially civil servants, our LG members, our National Council, and our civil society organizations and other organizations, the need for them to remain apolitical affects, hampers media in fulfilling our role to inform the nation. Why do media need public servants? No, I think for the media, public servants, especially those in the civil service, they are the professionals. They have the technical expertise. And they have the information. So media need them to explain to us how certain policies, plans, and activities would help the people, would be of larger interest to the country, or would not succeed. But then, in our context, because of this need for them to remain apolitical, because it is interpreted as not being allowed to talk, they do not talk to us openly. So today, if I want to do a story, just using as an example, our public servants who talk to media only if it's for, and if it puts their company, if it puts their ministry, department, or divisions in a very good light. If there's a government policy, and if I approach an NC member and say, okay, Tashu, what is your opinion on this? They would say that, okay, I'm apolitical, I am not supposed to talk on this. So what happens in such situation, Mola? We have to convince these sources, we have to tell them, please give me the information. We have to literally beg, and then I'll keep you like anonymous. I'll not use you as my source, I'll just say a source. So what happens then? Then the particular report ki story ki credibility is lost. A lot of people then question us, what is this Kinsali story? You are here saying a source, this person, that person, and no names, and then they think that media cooked up the story. No. So even if the information is right, without credible source, it is very difficult. Then it's especially very difficult during the elections. If a particular party pledges that, okay, free Wi-Fi to all. If we want to do a story, as media, we want to do, okay, whether that is doable, whether that pledge is achievable. And then we would want people from the Ministry of Information and Communications to talk to us and say, okay, this is how it's achievable, this is how it's not achievable. We would talk to officials from Department of DITT. But then if we go to them and approach them, they would always say that, okay, we are apolitical, we cannot give any comments. And very recently, I was doing Bumtangi by-election. I was doing this analysis on who is likely to win. I quoted the local leader saying, okay, it's not going to be an easy win for other candidates. It's not about just their capabilities. There are many other factors, unquote. Then a day after the story was published, I received a call from ECB media arbitrator, and then asked me who my source was. Before I could say that, okay, I'm not supposed to reveal my source, or I need source protection and all, the person on the other side, she asked me, okay, is it a serving local leader or a former local leader? And then she reminded that, okay, a serving local leader is not supposed to talk to media because he or she was supposed to remain apolitical. So I had to protect my source. I had to say, okay, it's a former local leader. And then 2 days after the call, Kinsel, I received a long letter from the ECBG Media Repetitor Office. They had issues with me, not stating that it was a former local leader. Then they had issue with my vote prediction. Luckily, I didn't cite my source as a public servant or a civil servant. I just said source X or Y. So that person was at least saved. But just citing it as an example. ECBG, we had ECBG senior officials walking into Kinsel. They had issues with us doing story on Thompens, 3 Thompens, wanting to recontest, the intention to recontest, because for media that's a story. We thought that people should know why they want to recontest and all. But ECB officials had their own reason, but from the media side, if you don't do the story, who will do? How will people know? Then it limits the public discourse in Babala. No, when media cannot write, then they will not know, then make engagement here. If media can write and report, I feel that if public servants are free to talk, then I think it will divert people's attention from the social media posts, fake account. So right now the problem, the Bhutanese mainstream media role, it has become like we are here to authenticate what is what in social media fake accounts authenticate So okay. When there is no discussion, when people do not talk about democracy, when people do not talk about any issues, then it limits the discussion on democracy. So wrapping up, I think I'll just say that, like Dashu said, we are all learning. And the cliched statement, media is young and democracy is also young. So let us learn from these experiences.
Now that we move on to Dashu Karmasittam, who was chairman of the Royal Civil Service Commission as Bhutan went through a very important phase of the democratization process.
I'll try to make 3 points. Firstly, what it really means to be apolitical, and I think not talking or talking to media may be one aspect of it, in terms of what is actually there in the system, the civil service system. And the second part, highlighting this apolitical in terms of more common speak, and thirdly, maybe make a case why having apolitical institutions are critical for the strong, vibrant democracies that we are all aiming for. So when it comes to what it means to be apolitical, it's mentioned once in our constitution, 4 times in the Civil Service Act of Bhutan, and in the civil service rules and regulations, very explicit provisions are there. So apolitical, the conversation does not have to be about opinions of people. It's actually quite explicit. What it says is the section 3.3.5, a civil servant shall be apolitical, non-partisan, and not stand for election under electoral laws of the kingdom. Any communication relayed by a civil servant in support or opposition of a political party or a candidate shall be treated as political advertising and in direct violation of civil service values and conduct, if so alleged and proven. And further, our code of conduct is very explicit. It says, a civil servant shall, 1, remain and uphold the political neutrality of the civil service at all times, provide forthright and impartial advice to the government. 3rd, speak truth to power. 4th, discharge official duties without fear and favor. And 5th, institute fair and transparent systems with proper documentation to ensure that decision-making is not politicized. Further, it goes on to say, a civil servant shall not, 1, be a candidate for any election conducted under the electoral laws. 2, canvass for a political party for a candidate. 3, attend political party meetings and support or carry out such activities. 4, express any opinion on politics, political parties, either explicitly or implicitly. 5, perform or neglect his duty based on his political view. 6, impose or influence another person's or group's political views. 6, indulge in any communication via telephonic means, including individual or bulk, SMS, internet, social media, what have you. And lastly, make contributions or fund any election campaign in favor of or against a candidate or a political party. Now, if I might summarize that in much more common speak, what it means is civil servants at all times should have the ability to tell political leaders, whichever government is in power, what they need to hear, even if it is not what they want to hear. Having done that, then whatever the decisions the government of the day takes, it is the job of civil servants, as long as those decisions are legal, to implement it without question. Second is to provide the best advice to elected governments irrespective or in spite of the personal political preferences, because remember, civil servants all vote. Third is to ensure that the advice from the institution, with the benefit of institutional memory and the professional expertise of people, not their personal opinions. And fourth is to ensure that all our laws, policies, rules and regulations are implemented without fear of favor, so that we can uphold the good governance principles of efficacy, transparency and accountability. So finally, if I may say, why is it important for civil servants or institutions, apolitical institutions, to be apolitical? They become the main foundation. Why? Because all administration is carried out by the institution of the civil service, and therefore, if they are able to remain apolitical, since by design they are more permanent, they can ensure that irrespective of political leadership, national interest is always protected and promoted. So this is extremely important to bear in mind when we have the conversation around why institutions, in particular like the civil service, the judiciary, must be apolitical. Thank you.
We'll come to Rastang Khandu, who's been a member of NC, but apart from the NC perspective, we also request you, have you seen politicians running away from people, or people running away from politicians in your experience, in your campaigns?
So in 2008, when our journey began, I remember us discussing the Constitution and also the election laws and also the respective House laws, the National Assembly Act and the Council Act. When we debated the issue of political affiliation and being apolitical, what did it actually mean? Many people had different views and perspectives, but I think the bottom line was that defining what was to be understood as being apolitical at that point of time was a bit overwhelming, because it was still really very new for us. But we all came to a consensus at the end of the debate that so long as if you register yourself with a political party, then you would be political, and if you did not register yourself as a member to a certain political party, then you were apolitical. And from that, I think the basis sort of flowed down, and when Tasho Kama mentioned a civil servant cannot run for office or cannot canvass for a candidate or political party, I think precisely that flows down from there. With that, the dynamics within the political sphere itself. Now, when I say politics, I really am speaking from the point of view from a parliamentarian perspective. So within the governance in Parliament, we have the National Assembly and the National Council. The National Assembly Act itself doesn't refer too much to this apolitical thing. The National Council actually has two provisions which talks about being non-partisan and also being a political institution. When we had the elections in 2008, we had the mock elections prior to that. And as a National Council candidate, my experience was when we went out for which was the first round of the national elections, the constituents, a lot of them would say, so there was a reference to the National Assembly election as being the Mumba election, the real election, and that sort of implied that the National Council election wasn't a real election. I sort of linked that to the fact that the National Council was projected as a political house, and the National Council was also seen as a house that just worked on laws and did not provide any developmental activities. So a lot of the constituents, actually voters, saw the National Council as somebody who would make laws, but did not necessarily bring roads or amenities. And therefore, by definition or reference, the National Council not being very important. Second, in the first elections and the second elections, as a National Council candidate, when you went out, a lot of the people were okay for you to come to their house and talk to them. But we hear from our colleagues in the other house that when political party candidates come, the supporters would openly welcome you into their homes and, provide you whatever support they need. But if they didn't support you, they would shut their door and they'd just not even let you in. But in the last few elections, I think things have improved. People are more amicable to sitting down with whatever shade or political color, representation you may be there. So, but increasingly, there's also a sense that if you identify yourself with a certain political party, and if they don't come to power, that you might not be in good books, and therefore you might lose out on certain privileges that you might have in terms of quicker access to government and the ministers and any kind of support that may be possible. So from that perspective, I think apolitical has been stretched in that sense that even I think some of the voters probably feel that remaining apolitical means perhaps not really declaring your support openly for a candidate or a political party. Now, from a parliamentarist perspective, at least from my experience in National Council, when Tashi from Quincy, she talked about access to information, in the beginning, we had a lot of difficulty, even as a serving parliamentarian in the National Council, to get access to information. One of the experiences was when we had the gap in communication when the second government tried to bring in the right to information legislation. So access to information is not really just limited to the journalists, but you also see that within Parliament also, parliamentarians also struggle to have access to information. And in there, I think we've been lucky to have successively good parliamentary leadership, and there have been improvements in terms of sharing information with the government, but I think there's a long way to go, even though we've made a lot of progress. But I think apolitical now, in terms of politics, there's a lot of fake news. I think credibility of mainstream media has been questioned many times. Because we are an oral society and rumor works very well, and also because partisan politics, as we've seen in the West, can garner a lot of vote for elections. This mix seems to be a very dangerous mix without a strong media and without the involvement of academia and commentators in it. Because without that, debates are becoming very subjective. So if one was to share an opinion, and a lot of times without enough research, it seems to be easily called that depending on the convenience. So somebody might say you're politicizing the issue, which is not a bad thing because you're trying to highlight the issue so that it's debated. But then it can easily say that you're supposed to be apolitical, therefore you cannot raise it. So for example, in my experience in National Council, sometimes when the National Council raised issues which are of national importance, we've had successive governments call the National Council the default opposition. This has come out even in the media. And that is precisely what, when it does not suit the convenience of the government, sometimes even the National Council, which actually takes a political stand, is also labeled as being very political and by default the opposition. But all this, I think they need to define give it a clearer definition, what it means to be apolitical, as opposed to how the civil service rules are. I think the other areas are still not well defined. And we are still stuck with the idea that so long as you're not registered with a political party, therefore you're apolitical. And that is one area. But the other area is whenever you speak something that actually might make sense, it gives the people in positions of authority to call it quickly political, biased, non-neutral, and therefore discredit the information saying, since you're supposed to be political, whatever you say is, it violates the rules and codes. So that's what I want to share.
So then we come to Dr. Lungten, who is, by the way, also was a member of the Constitution Drafting Committee. So this is, Dr. Lungten would we request you to tell us about, in fact, the beginnings of this terminology, what the thinking was, and the evolution that you've seen, through the past 3 governments. Please go ahead, sir.
I would like to really touch onto the basic idea of structural democracy that we have adopted is our political civil service, which supports the 3 arms of the government, in fact. So in a democratic function, the separation of powers is very important, and therefore we term it as a horizontal check and balance, where we have an equal level playing field in terms of laws making, then interpretation by the courts, and execution of the laws and policies by the executive government led by the Prime Minister. So therefore, in terms of this design and idea, then we should have a structural which is vertical check and balance. If the Darshange has pointed out that why National Council needed to be apolitical, the vertical check and balance is that in the National Assembly, the government of the day has a majority. So they vote on bills, laws, and legislation. So therefore, in order to check and balance that it is not unconstitutional, the very design of National Council as apolitical institution was very desirable. So similarly, the change of government that we have seen for last almost 14 years of our constitution in transition, so we have learned to survive and learned to experience the political culture where the cabinet has changed 3 times and our civil servants as apolitical, what Tashi Doima pointed out, and Dasu Karma's stand that rather chances of even becoming politicized civil servants, which is a tension I see here. But in a way that what we provide is that right from the secretaries down in the ministries or department, we civil servants are bound by our legislation. But then at the same time, the political master, the parties who won the election, are mandated to fulfill the obligations, policies, and the manifestos they have taken. And therefore, the resource that they gather, the expenditure they make to fulfill those objectives, I mean, our civil servants has learned to work together. And this is the aspect of structural and mapping of powers, they say. So what we should be clearly understanding. And then next is the political morality and the political correctness in terms of now. Once the government is elected, it should be government of the people of Bhutan. So therefore, there should not be any hinges or interference or non-interference in terms of political decision that civil service should be worried of when they execute their functions in accordance with law. AG is actually the advisor to the government and to the state. Therefore, my duty as an AG is to follow the law and don't make any government of the day falters law and be unconstitutional and face the bragging of the litigations and things like that. So my duty is to ensure that laws are followed. So is the civil servant down the line. So we have to be very clear in terms of our roles in a transitional democracy, and the constitutional design that we are supposed to bound by law. So therefore, we are the balance between the political institution in a democracy and provide an independent, fair, transparent, and equal administration of justice to the people. His Majesty the Fourth King that why civil servants need to be apolitical is to support government, make it functional, and also ensure that civil servant provides a continuum of services during election cycles, so that there's a confidence from our people. There's a free and fair election being conducted. I think the design is very good. We have the best of the Constitution. If the not best, we have gone through all this structural and research behind it, and that's why we are looking to a vibrant and functional democracy.
So, I'd like to call on Lien Chu now to share your views, your opinion of the Bhutanese political system being apolitical, then the media, role of media, and also social media, which is playing a very important role here in politics, inadvertently perhaps.
Thank you. Thank you, Kinley, for giving me the floor. The fact that you have gathered such eminent speakers from key branches of government and the strong media presence here today These are certainly hallmarks of a vibrant democracy at work in Bhutan. But let me begin by stating that each country determines what is best in its own national interests. Therefore, my comments here today are made in the spirit of food for thought, in inverted commas. They are not meant at all to advocate any particular mode or practice that we have in Singapore. So the question you may ask is, how do we understand democracy in Singapore? So there's really no simple answer, but the fact is that the People's Action Party, which has governed Singapore since independence in 1965, has been given mandate after mandate by voters after each general election to continue governing, each time after it delivered on its electoral campaign promises. Well, we know that behind any success is a lot of hard work and commitment. So the PAP's political longevity in Singapore, even its critics will acknowledge, has to do with its ability to deliver better and better living standards for successive generations of Singaporeans. Better housing, better healthcare, better education, transport facilities, jobs, etc., etc. So this brings me to the crux of our discussion. What does it mean to be apolitical in the public service for us in Singapore? The Singapore government succeeds in its endeavors largely through ensuring the integrity, competence, and commitment of the public sector to carry out its political, economic, and social agenda. So public servants are subject to the rules established by the Public Service Division, and they must serve the legitimately elected government of the day. Civil servants who are part of the public sector, they are 86,000 strong, must remain apolitical, and this means that they should not be affiliated to any political party, and therefore to stand for election under a political party affiliation, the individual must necessarily resign from the civil service. So here let me say a bit more on what we understand by being apolitical. It does not mean that the civil servants will not talk or argue on their own to take positions, one different from the other, in front of their respective government ministers. They do have their own political attitudes, biases for certain policy implementations, and so forth. After all, it's in the role of the civil servant to work with and for political leaders in a political environment, and yet maintain a detachment from politics. So there's always a fine balance between being neutral and non-political, between a civil service that's politically sensitive and responsive. So in Singapore, civil servants have to be politically impartial, not campaign for or against any political party, and definitely should not misuse state resources or powers for partisan political purposes. But this does not mean that civil servants, especially senior ones, should shy away from carrying out their duties when a matter proves to be politically controversial. Once the internal discussions have taken place within government and political decisions are taken, the civil servants are expected to implement policy decisions, and this often involves engaging the media. Otherwise, public policies for the greater good of society will not be understood nor accepted by the people for whom these very policies are designed for in the first place. There's no doubt that mass media plays an important role in shaping public opinion. This is even more important in the age of social media, where fake news abounds. So the mainstream media has the responsibility of gathering information that is accurate and conveying views that are fair. So effort has to be made to understand much background thinking that went into any important policy. Here, our experience in Singapore is that the media can only be expected to come on board after senior government officials or elected political office holders share pertinent background knowledge with the media representatives. This is a process of building trust. For while the media plays an important role in a democracy, media representatives are not the equivalent of elected representatives who have a responsibility to the constituents who elected them. In other words, the media should not perceive its role as one of being an institutional check and balance against the government. A professional media with high standards of competence should inform and communicate accurately and effectively. By all means, report or highlight public dissatisfaction or disquiet over certain government moves or decisions if it exists, but do so in the spirit of wanting to improve things by being able to provide better alternatives or suitable amendments. Now that implies a substantial knowledge of the matter at hand.
Thank you very much, Lien Chew. Before we go into question and answer, I'd like to give all the panelists an opportunity to comment on what they've heard so far from each other. Very brief comments.
I personally feel that, with all the due respects to all our people, all our former officials who worked so much into the Constitution and Civil Service Act, I feel that could it be a little bit borrowed idea from developed countries where Kongi Phagi public servants, the large in number, but in our case, Naludi, because very limited people, and we know who. We not only know who is supporting for whom, but we also know who voted for whom. So Hansum context Nalu, and especially for our civil service Kinalu, people who have the information are bureaucrats, senior bureaucrats whose promotion depends on the government key recommendation. No, so Hansum Beodalu, how do they talk freely of plans, policies, and activities of any government?
Firstly, maybe a point of correction. I think civil servants' promotions are not in the hand of the political leaders. That's one of the reasons why the Royal Civil Service Commission is established as an independent, autonomous body under the Constitution, is to ensure that we don't create a system of spoils. And countries where they have such systems where elected governments can just change top leadership, those countries have not been doing well. And we know the examples like Greece, etc. So that's one of the mechanisms in place to make sure our civil service can remain apolitical for the reasons I mentioned earlier. I feel this idea that in the name of apoliticalness, civil servants are refusing to talk to the media is more like a excuse rather than a real reason. Because as you saw from what I mentioned, which is the explicit code of conduct, there's nothing which stops civil servants for talking. So I think maybe there is also an unrealistic expectations, I feel, from the media side. When civil servants speak, they can only give you facts, but that's not what many reporters want. We just try to protect and promote the country's interest. But senior civil servants, they are actually, one of their responsibilities is also to speak to the media when necessary. But most of the time, when it comes to selling policies, etc., it's actually the politicians who do it. Because that is the art of politics, selling policies which gets them elected if they are good. And once elected, those policies are implemented by civil servants to the benefit of the country. The idea that whatever comes from the media, even the established media, is not necessarily true. And I think just like civil service has to learn, and civil servants have to learn how to behave in this new environment, I think there's also a lesson for the media. If you look at the West, you can turn on CNN, you can turn on Fox, and the same issue, you'll get two totally different perspectives. We do not know whether that's happening in Bhutan, but I do recall in certain conversations, people saying, oh, this paper is more favorable to this. political party, irrespective. What we should all be after are the best ideas that serve the country well. And in doing so, there is space. In the government, there's all sorts of processes we have created to make sure our country can learn and keep on growing, and we should all seek to do that. The idea that for whatever reasons, as soon as there's a debate or a viewpoint expressed, especially if it is against a government view, is taken to be political. And I think this is simply lack of maturity, that we have to reach a stage where we can talk about searching for better solutions, because we all should seek always the best solutions. And that time we should not be attached to our positions. And I think this idea that can we try to move away from framing everything as political? And I think that is actually unfortunate, and maybe that has led to a high level of self-censure than necessary, because once you say it's political, then of course, in a small society like Bhutan, where everyone knows everyone, and there's a premium on harmony, why would we want to do that? We don't want to upset people unnecessarily, but we need to create a safe space where this new culture can come. So I think it's just about learning to engage in this new space, including with the media, so that the purposes of good governance are promoted. I wanted to read this quote from the Prime Minister of Singapore made to the civil servants, where he said, "In Singapore, we often think of policies as the real purpose of governance, while politics is merely the sometimes messy means of choosing a government. Ministers live in the land of politics, civil servants in the land of policies. And when you cross the border, there's a rigorous checkpoint. You are frisked as you enter a different country. But government is not so clear-cut and simple, because life is not so clear-cut and simple. Policy and politics cannot be separated so neatly." And I just wanted to highlight this to say that while we talk about apolitical civil service, but the fact is they are actually engaged on a daily basis in terms of translating the visions or the directions the elected leaders have into policies that can further the interest of the country. So clearly, while we talk about being apolitical, civil servants, by the nature of their job, have to be involved in translating politics into policies for the benefit. It is the apolitical stance is only important to ensure that when they do this, they bring on board the full benefit of all their past experiences and their professional expertise, and not be influenced or discolored by their political preferences.
I thought Dashu actually elaborated and give it a very good context, and perhaps this is one of the biggest challenges that I confronted many times as a serving MP. So whenever you wanted to raise an issue you thought was pertinent, the immediate reference was that you're either with us or you're with them. There's no objectivity to any discussion, and then rational logic argument is out of the window, and then you're given a political color. And I think this has put a lot of pressure on, just like me, my colleagues, and I imagine this is also true for local government leaders, even the local government leaders. So that worry sometimes, rather than acting apolitically, makes you remain inactive, inaction. So people fall back to being inactive. So you'll also see slow response or no response as a result. So there's almost also a group of people who push the idea that policy making is the lone spear of the executive, and nobody else has any hand in it. And I think a lot of us would agree that that's not true, because in the first place, our 5-year plans are drafted by civil service. It takes 2.5 years for them to go around and draft a policy, which forms the basis of the development activities of the next government for the next 5 years. So to say that policy making is the sole sphere of the elected government would be wrong from that perspective. Second, once the elected government comes into power, all the manifesto promises are not necessarily made a part of the plan. Not because political parties don't want to, but there's already a plan drafted by the Planning Commission, and then the political parties have been given a mandate, but marrying that to that has been a challenge. I think there's been a lot of progress, but that's what the current Prime Minister also shared in the Parliament debate once, that the plans may be outdated, and we are not able to act quickly enough to situation. And similarly, I think you have political parties who are not necessarily elected in parliament, but they're there nonetheless representing viewpoints of certain segments of society. And that also needs to be included. If you don't have a platform for open discussions, it can quickly be labeled as being political in nature to tarnish the image of the ruling government and therefore immediately discounted rather than being inclusive.
The constitutional fundamental rights to vote, that every citizen, adult 18 years and above, have the right to vote itself is political. So we have to also have an understanding that once there is a duly elected government, that being a civil servant, you should be apolitical. The design is that we cannot shun our civil servants from not having certain ideology, and that we have to build into the system.
Tashi Dema, I completely sympathize with you because the media always wants to have the information, to have a story, to do a report, and how do you get anything when you are not part of the process of any decision making? This is a major challenge, not just for the media in Bhutan, but all over the world in any media organization. To come to the point that was raised by Sangye Khandu, that policy is not just the purview of those in government, in the policy-making machinery. I think here there is a slight gap between those who have worked within government, where the policy-making machinery is fully entrenched, and those who are outside of government. And what is very often forgotten by those who are not in the administration is that policy is actually a process. It's not a product that comes from nowhere. A lot of it has to do with crunching numbers, looking at the rationale why things are being done. So there is a major challenge within any administration to come up with a policy, not to mention a newly elected government would want to do things to try and deliver on its campaign promises. And sometimes it's not very easy for a single official, as long, it's almost like a food chain, to be able to talk to the journalists so readily, unless he or she has been given the okay or green light from the higher ups. But very often it would be better for the elected office holder, the political office holder, to actually talk to the media directly and say, this is what we want to do for this, such and such, and for the policy and so forth. And as for the issue of voting, yes, I agree with Dr. Lung Ten that every official, every civil servant, every public servant in any country has a right as a citizen to exercise his vote. And that is entirely a personal choice. So if he or she is going to cast the vote without knowing what different political parties are saying, that's really not very healthy. So in some ways, you do want an informed electorate. And it is obviously very important to actually follow what is happening, being said, or at least advocated by different interest groups, but at the same time remaining professional as civil servants, to be politically neutral at the time of execution of your duties. Thank you.
Well, a very important point, this whole being apolitical, not allowed to say this, is actually limiting people's actions. I think Sangye is making that point, that when you think, I can't do this, I can't do that, it's really it's a kind of restriction on the person, either self-imposed or by the system or perceived regulations.